Shalom uvracha. The Chag of Purim is generally associated as a day of mishte v'simcha, of partying and happiness, gaiety and laughter and fun. But there's another element to the holiday of Purim, a theme that permeates really throughout the entire Chag, that I believe is especially important this year as we celebrate the Chag of Purim, and that is the theme of tefillah, of prayer. The Gemara Masechet Megillah Daf Yud Bet Amud Bet discusses the introduction of Mordechai to the Purim story. And the Gemara notes that when Mordechai is introduced, the pasuk says, "Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan abira, ushmo Mordechai ben Yair ben Shim'i ben Kish ish Yemini." And the Gemara asks, why is it that the Megillah introduces to us both Mordechai's father and grandfather and great-grandfather? Typically, in Tanakh, when someone is introduced, they're introduced with their father, but not necessarily introduced together with the name of their grandfather and great-grandfather. So why here does the Megillah highlight Mordechai's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather? And the Gemara answers that the reason why these three people were specifically mentioned in the Megillah is because each of them, through their name, highlight who Mordechai was. Says the Gemara, Kulan al Shimo Nikro. Each of these, their names represent and highlight who Mordechai was. Ben Yair, Ben Shehi'ir Enehem Shel Yisrael B'Tfilato. He was somebody who opened up the eyes of Am Yisrael through his tefillah. Ben Shim'i, Ben Sheshama El Tfilato. He was somebody whose tefillot were answered. Ben Kish, Shehi Kish Al Sha'arei Rachamim V'Niftechulo. He banged on the gates of mercy, and those gates were opened up for him. And so what this Gemara highlights is that Mordechai's ability to achieve salvation in the Megillah story really occurred through tefillah, specifically through the koach tefillah, through the power of his tefillah. He was able to achieve the salvation. This is hinted to as well in the beginning of the Megillah story, when Esther tells Mordechai that she's about to go to Achashverosh, and she says to Mordechai, "Lech kenoset kol haYehudim hanimtzaim b'Shushan." Gather together all the Jews who are in Shushan, v'tzumu olai v'otochlu ve'al tushtu shloshet yamim, and fast for me, don't eat or drink for 3 days. The Maharal notes that the phrase Lech Kenos that Esther uses is not by chance. The phrase Lech Kenos is actually a reference to what we know as the Beit HaKnesset. What Esther was telling Mordechai was not just to gather together to fast, but was that Am Yisrael should gather together in a Beit HaKnesset as a Beit HaKnesset to daven, because the key to her ability to be successful in approaching Achashverosh was through the vehicle of tefillah. And in fact, the Gemara in Masechet Megillah describes as Esther was approaching Achashverosh's throne that she was continuing to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, asking that she should be successful. And so we see that the theme of tefillah is something that permeates throughout the entire story. The actual salvation of Am Yisrael on the Purim story really occurred through the tefillot of Esther, of Mordechai, and of all of Am Yisrael. To take this a step further, the Gemara in Masechet Megillah discusses why it is we don't say Hallel on Purim. And there are two answers that are given. The second answer that's given by Rav Nachman is Kriyata Zu Hilula. That the reason we don't say Hallel on Purim is because the reading of Megillat Esther is itself, in effect, a declaration of Hallel. And so what this Gemara is highlighting for us is that when we read the Megillah on Purim night and Purim morning, it's not simply meant to be a story and we follow along. Rather, the act of reading the Megillah is itself a form of hoda'ah and thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As we read through the Megillah, we're meant to feel the fear and anxiety of Am Yisrael in the beginning of the story as they feel themselves in danger. And we're also meant as well to feel the thanks, the hoda'ah, and the simcha of Am Yisrael as the salvation occurs. The act of reading the Megillah is not meant simply to be a story that we read, but rather it is meant to be a praise. That itself is meant to be an act of praise, an act of thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so the salvation occurred through tefillah. The act, the main mitzvah that we do on that day, the act of reading the Megillah is itself a tefillah. Therefore, the day of Purim is really meant to be a day of tefillah. It's a day where we're meant to not simply celebrate and party, but to also take those moments to dive into HaKadosh Baruch Hu for those things that are important to us, to thank him for all that he has done for us on a personal and national level, and to daven for him that he should continue to bring about those things that are important to us both personally and nationally. The Sifrei Chasidim and the Sifrei Chasidus write that there's a famous halacha on Purim, Kol haposhet yad notnim lo, that anyone who gives out that, when it comes to giving tzedakah, normally when it comes to giving tzedakah, we're a little bit more discerning who we give tzedakah to, but on Purim, anyone who sticks out their hand, we're meant to give them tzedakah. We're not meant to ask any questions. We give tzedakah to whoever asks. And the Sifrei Chasidus explain that this doesn't just refer to how we're meant to act to our fellow Jews, but this is also how HaKadosh Baruch Hu acts towards us on the day of Purim. On the day of Purim, Kol HaPoshet Yad, anyone who turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and puts out their hand and asks for something, Not Nimlo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will respond in kind. And so Purim is meant to be a day where we don't simply celebrate and have a good time, but rather we should use Purim as a day of tefillah, as a day to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank him for all those things that he has done for us, and of course continue to daven that he should bring about the Yeshua both personally and nationally. Wishing everybody a Purim Sameach and a freilichen and meaningful Purim.